They told you love would save you, that a relationship would complete you, that finding the one would bring peace, meaning, clarity. But what if Nietzsche was right, and love, as it's sold to you, is not salvation, but sedation? What if the real purpose of most relationships is not growth, but containment? You think you're falling in love. But what's actually happening is far more subtle. You're agreeing to a contract, a silent agreement to stay the same. 2. Be predictable, to be emotionally safe, to orbit each other in patterns, routines, roles. They don't love your fire. They love the version of you that keeps them comfortable. And so, without even noticing, you begin to shrink. You bite your tongue. You soften your truth. You mold your edges to fit their fears. You stop becoming and start maintaining. Nietzsche saw this clearly. To become who you are, you must break, transcend, erupt. But most relationships aren't built to handle transformation. They're built to resist it. The truth is brutal. Most people don't want you to grow, because the moment you do, you'll outgrow them. And so they love you not for your becoming, but for your predictability. That's not love. That's a prison with soft lighting. You think they love you, but they love your habits, your routines, the way you laugh at their jokes, the way you make them feel safe. They love the version of you that doesn't threaten their story. But what happens when you change? What happens when you speak harder truths? When you break old patterns? When you stop tolerating smallness? They pull back. They accuse. They say you're distant, arrogant, cold. But the truth is simpler. Your growth exposes their stagnation, and they hate the mirror you're becoming. Nietzsche believed the self must be overcome, again and again. But most relationships demand stability. They want you to stay who you were when they met you. So the moment your spirit sharpens, the tension begins. You're forced to choose. Keep the peace, or keep evolving. But peace is cheap if it comes at the cost of your fire. Ask yourself honestly, do they challenge you? Or do they tame you? Do they sharpen your mind, or dull it with comfort? Do they support your growth, or punish your ambition? Most people don't fall in love with your soul. They fall in love with your silence. What passes for intimacy today is often just mutual mimicry. Two people mirroring each other's traumas, each validating the other's pain, but never confronting it. A cycle of soothing, not sharpening. Nietzsche didn't see love as comfort. He saw it as creative tension, the fusion of two powerful wills colliding, challenging, transforming. But that's rare. Most relationships demand imitation. They want you to be similar in values, in beliefs, in pain. And if you diverge, even slightly, they feel threatened. Why? Because your difference forces them to see the limits of their own story. And people don't want that. They don't want to see. They want to be affirmed. So you end up shrinking yourself to fit the relationship. You hide your fire to keep them warm. But imitation is not intimacy. That real intimacy is not agreement. It's exposure. It's standing fully in your truth and letting the other do the same. Even if it burns. It's not safety. It's revelation. And very few people can handle it. You think you're in love. But look closer. How often do you feel watched, measured, judged? Not for what you do, but for what you want to become? Real love celebrates expansion. But most relationships become surveillance systems. They don't just watch you. They subtly punish your transformation. New habits, new thoughts, new dreams. Each one met with suspicion, tension, emotional withdrawal. It's not always verbal. Sometimes it's just the look, the silence, the shift in energy that says, I don't recognize you anymore. And that's the point, because becoming someone new means killing the version they loved. Nietzsche would call that necessary. Most call it betrayal. But ask yourself, who is betraying whom? Are you betraying them, or are they betraying the possibility within you? Love is not loyalty to who someone used to be. Love is reverence for who someone is becoming, even when that becoming leaves you behind. Every relationship has a contract. Most just never say it out loud. You agree to show up a certain way, to feel a certain range of emotions, to not outgrow the container you've both built. And the moment you break the contract, everything shakes. You're accused of changing, of being distant, of losing love. But what you're really doing is shedding a skin that was suffocating you. Nietzsche believed becoming was war, inner war, evolution through destruction. But relationships, built on invisible contracts, can't withstand that fire. They need the old you, the version that smiled more, needed less, thought smaller. So the moment you evolve, the contract feels broken. Not because you stopped loving, but because you started breathing, and the cage they built with good intentions begins to rattle. Most people don't leave you for who you become. They leave you because who you become refuses to die for their comfort. Love, when real, fuels growth. But when fake, it becomes camouflaged control. They say, I love you just as you are. But what they mean is, don't change or I'll feel insecure. You start reading harder books and they mock it. You change your habits and they act like you're rejecting them. You speak harder truths and they say you're aggressive. But Nietzsche would ask, is love afraid of transformation? No. Only fear is . So look closely at your relationship. Are they cheering your evolution or quietly resisting it? Do they want you to become or to stay accessible? The truth is, most people don't love you. They love the feeling you give them, the mirror you reflect, the certainty you offer. But when your growth becomes inconvenient, their love becomes pressure. That's not love. That's fear wearing your favorite face. There comes a moment in every relationship where your soul gets louder. The things you tolerated now choke you. The routines feel lifeless. The conversations become echoes. And you feel a quiet grief, not because they hurt you, but because you're no longer small enough to fit. Nietzsche would call this a sacred moment. It's the soul preparing to transcend. But society doesn't celebrate this. It tells you to compromise, to sacrifice, to suppress, to stay even if it means self-betrayal. You tell yourself it's noble. But what's noble about shrinking? What's virtuous about lying to your own fire? The most painful breakups aren't with other people. They're with the person you had to be to stay with them. And when you finally let that version die, you don't lose love. You gain freedom. They tell you love means becoming one. But Nietzsche would ask, one what? One identity? One dream? One direction? This romantic fusion is a myth. Most relationships don't create unity. They erase difference. You sacrifice pieces of yourself for connection, not because you want to, but because you've been taught that love means compromise. But compromise becomes corrosion. Soon, you don't know what you believe, what you want, what you're becoming. You're just half of something that may have never deserved your wholeness. You are not born to be half. You are born to become a singular force, to know your instincts, to follow your will, to speak your truth, even if it shakes the room. But love, as it's marketed, tells you to soften, to yield, to merge, and in that merging, your edge dulls. But Nietzsche warned, the self must remain sovereign, because only a sovereign self can love freely, not out of need, not out of fear, but from overflow. If your love requires shrinking, it's not love. It's symbiosis in chains. You'll hear it when you evolve. You've changed. You don't care like you used to. you're selfish. But what they really mean is, you stopped living in my story. Nietzsche called this the herd instinct, the collective. Pressure to conform, to return, to behave. So when you grow, you disturb the ecosystem. Your silence becomes suspicious. Your discipline looks like rejection. Your ambition feels like betrayal. But you must not flinch. They will label you cold, detached, distant. But they are mistaken warmth for obedience. They loved you when you mirrored them. When you laughed at the same jokes, believed the same lies, lived the same loop. But now you've stepped out of the loop. You've tasted something higher, and you refuse to return. So let them call you cold, because cold is the beginning of clarity, and clarity is the beginning of becoming. Real love stares into the unknown and says yes. False love fears it. It clings to what it knows. It wants labels, plans, guarantees. But Nietzsche taught the abyss is sacred. It's where transformation begins. So when you feel called to change, to shed layers, break patterns, pursue truth, most partners will panic. Not because they hate you, but because they fear the disappearance of who you were. They say, don't go too far. Don't lose yourself. But what they mean is, don't lose the version of you I can understand. But the abyss does not apologize. It requires death of illusion, of comfort, of identity. And if your partner clings to your surface, they will never hold your becoming. This isn't cruelty. It's gravity. Most relationships are built on fear of the abyss, but your soul was built to walk through it, alone if necessary. There's a silent shame in outgrowing someone. You feel guilt, regret. You wonder if you're broken. But Nietzsche reminds us, life is flux. Becoming requires rupture. And not every love is meant to survive your transformation. That doesn't make it fake, it makes it finite. Some people are chapters. Some are sentences. But not all are meant to be your entire story. We mistake duration for depth, consistency for connection. But true connection doesn't always last. It ignites. It burns, teaches, sharpens, and then ends. But we resist. Endings. We cling. We rot in loyalty. We strangle the memory. But staying in what no longer matches your soul is not love. It's spiritual decay. You're not cruel for evolving. You're cruel when you pretend. You haven't just to keep someone else from feeling lost. Every relationship either reflects your becoming or resists it. There is no neutral. Nietzsche believed that the strongest friendships and loves were built on shared overcoming, not agreement, but shared ascent. Two people climbing their own mountains, not pulling each other back into the valley. So look around. Are they climbing with you or anchoring you? Do your conversations lift your mind or lull your fire? Do they sharpen your courage or soothe your fear? Many people love you best when you're tired, tame, compliant, because your fire demands their awakening, and most aren't ready to wake. But you must choose, reflect or resist. Anything less than reflection is resistance wearing a kind face. You needed them once, their warmth, their presence, their reflection. But what you need to become now is different. And that's terrifying, because letting go feels like death. You're not just losing them, you're losing who you were with them, the identity, the story, the comfort. But Nietzsche says, become who you are, not who you are. So the courage is this, to thank the love that helped you survive, and walk away to find the fire that will help you ascend. You don't need to hate them. You just need to stop shrinking for them. Some love saved your life, but not all love is meant to build your soul. You are not born to belong. You are born to become, and the love that honors that is rare. It does not demand. It does not cage. It does not fear your change. It watches you evolve and says, go further. Nietzsche believed the highest love is not comfort, but creation. Not fusion, but fire. A relationship where both souls burn, not to please each other, but to surpass themselves. This is the love worth seeking. One that honors solitude, that celebrates silence, that sharpens your edge, that says, I won't hold you back. I'll walk beside your becoming, or I'll step aside. Until you find that, protect your fire, guard your path, and walk alone proudly, if that's what becoming requires. Because you were not made to be loved. You were made to become love itself, wild, sovereign, free.